What's up, guys? It's Jeremy Jeffers from What's the Alternative Podcast, back with another episode 11. I have another special guest in the building. We met on Clubhouse, which is an app that has different rooms, and we were in a room talking about athletes and how athletes deal with different stuff off the court. And I thought it would be great to bring Miss Misty Buck to the episode. Misty, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how you got into the business that you're into now. And for you guys that don't know, Misty is an athlete, mental health coach. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so thank you so much. I'm so glad that we connected on Clubhouse. I don't know about you, but it's been like great for me for meeting new people who are in that have like same interest, right? Like sort of like in your tribe.
Sure.
So I've really been enjoying that. So I'm so glad that we connected, and I guess we'll start with so my name is Misty, and I'm an athlete mental health coach. I'm also the author of this book, The Athlete Mental Health Playbook, published that last year. And so that's sort of opened up all kinds of doors for me and reaching out to people. And so that's been pretty cool. And then I'm also a business owner. I've owned a marketing business and agency for over 10 years now. We're actually going into our 14th year. We specialize in social media marketing. So yeah, so that's sort of been my first business. But then how I got into the coaching, to answer your question, is I sort of with that, the marketing thing, I love the creativity behind it. I love being an entrepreneur, but I still felt like there was something, like a piece of me missing. And so long story short is, when I was younger, I grew up around sports. My dad was a football coach. My brother played football. I was always on the sidelines. I was a cheerleader, and then I was a cheerleader coach. And so it's sort of like enveloped in this world where we learn things like, and I was a super sensitive kid, by the way, but it was always like, don't be weak, don't be soft, stop, Missy, why are you crying again? Like, stop being a baby. It was like sort of like that really, really tough, relentless mindset. And then when I got into my teenage years, went through some hard times and ended up falling into a pretty deep depression. Got to the point with having suicidal thoughts and expressed that to my family, and I got the treatment that I needed, thank God. But when I started to look back and looking at my life and thinking, where can I serve, right? Because I think like that's the piece I felt like I was missing, is I felt that I wasn't doing enough in service to people, if I'm being really honest with you. So like, yes, I was providing a good service as a marketing agency, but I don't feel like I was doing anything to really transform somebody from the inside.
Right.
And so that like was heavy on me. And so I was working with this coach, and I was trying to figure out, I got certified as a coach, trying to figure out what to do. And then, so I was talking with him about my experiences, and it dawned on me through this conversation with him, why don't I coach athletes on mental health? Because there's got to be people out there. And this was before the Kevin Love thing came out. And, I mean, obviously people had come forward with their struggles before, but the DeMar DeRozan and Kevin Love player tribune thing is like what really blew this conversation up. And I'm so glad that it did.
Right.
And so anyway, so I was thinking there's got to be people that grew up like me, right, with this mindset, and like really struggled and ended up struggling with that, because I still am, at the end of the day, I'm a human. I'm not a robot. I have emotions. And so that's how I landed. That's basically how I landed here.
Gotcha. So we'll dive right into it. What athletes have you worked with? And I saw that you were featured on ESPN. Is that right?
So I wasn't actually, so that's a funny story. So I wish I was featured on ESPN. You're talking about the picture on my Instagram where I'm with the guys from Highly Questionable.
Yeah. That's what I was looking at.
Yeah, so I wish I was a guest on the show. Actually, the way I got onto that, if I'm being really honest, is I won it in a silent auction. I won the backstage thing. So it's not a secret. It's just like, that's how I got there. I wish that it was something that maybe one day they'll have me on as a guest, right? They'll have me back in, and I'll be a guest this time.
Well, that had to have been a pretty cool experience to be on set and everything.
That was really freaking cool. First of all, I can't believe that I won the silent auction item, because I bid on it. I was like, for sure, somebody's going to outbid me by the end of the night. There's no way this is just going to sit here. And God's grace, I won, you know? And so I went in, it was super friggin' cool. I got to sit in on like the last hour of the Love It's Hard show. And this was a few years ago. And then I got to sit in on watching a filming of Highly Questionable, which when it was Dan and Poppy and Bomani, like that was my can't miss daily show. And so I was like just geeking out a little bit. I was like, oh my God. I got to hold the sign that said like, see or no, if you're familiar with the show. So that was a super, super cool experience for me. And they were all just the nicest people. And so that was really cool. And it is nice. It happens in my own backyard in Miami, right?
Yeah,
so
that's pretty cool.
So that was super cool. Yeah.
Well, what athletes have you worked with?
So you know, we sign confidentiality agreements. So there's only so many things that I can say, but I do work with some athletes. I don't know if they've talked about it publicly before, but there's some that are actually now they actually went as far as college. Those are the ones I can talk about. And so now they're like entrepreneurs. And so I don't know if you know Taj Deshawn, he has a athlete to entrepreneur podcast that he does and a whole thing. So he's one that I've worked with. But basically it's mostly guys. I'll be really honest with you, although I'll work with females, but it's mostly guys that come to me and they just, basically it's because they want a female to open up to, they feel comfortable speaking to a woman. And so that's how it ends up, you know, we end up having those conversations.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's mostly the male athletes that have the problem? Do you think it's because of the pressure that the males feel to perform at a high level? So they feel, I guess they put their emotions in a trash can and feel like they have to be a machine to perform, to impress the coach, to impress the fans, to impress the higher ups. Do you think that's the reason why males come to you?
I think it's a couple different reasons. So I've had, and I don't think it's to say that women don't have these issues, because I'm living proof that that's 100% not true. But I think that I have heard, I'll say it this way, there was a client who told me once, there's actually a couple of clients that told me this, that they come to me specifically because they vibed with me, but also because they don't want to open up to another guy for whatever personal reason about what they have going on. They'd rather talk to a woman about it. And so that's just how some of those relationships have come to be.
So how does diving into the mental health part, and I want you to kind of break down and dissect my question from an athlete standpoint. Me being a former athlete, I've dealt with certain stuff myself, and I've seen various friends deal with depression. So we'll go with the actual pressure of an athlete while he's continuously playing. So the pressure of a collegiate athlete, professional athlete, now that it's not leisure anymore, it's not fun, it's not high school. So now it becomes a job. How do they deal? What is your advice on how they deal with that pressure of performing at that high level and being so-called a machine?
Right. I think a lot of what has to happen is this deconditioning that you have to be a machine and that you have to be a robot. And I think sometimes the athletes, they get scared because they think, okay, if I come off that, now I'm not going to play with that same intensity, right? Or if I don't hold that anger inside, I'm not going to release it on the court, for example. Right. And so maybe that's going to change my game. And the reality is that with each individual, we look to find a way to balance that mental toughness with mental wellness, and really just preaching that it's essential to take care of your body. Take care of your mental wellness the way that you take care of your body.
Right.
And so when you're looking at that pressure, we can look for things like, if you were to even look up, for example, one of my favorite, we'll call him a mentor, even though I've never met him in person before, George Mumford. He is a mindful athlete coach, and he wrote a book called The Mindful Athlete, actually. Mm-hmm. And he's worked with people like Jordan, Kobe, like all these different guys, and he's still very active with the pros today. And those are very competitive people, but they learn how to sort of channel that pressure. You use breathing techniques. There's all kinds of things that you can use to keep your focus and keep your intensity, but not let it control you. In other words, like, you ever seen a guy like go to the sideline and they just like explode, and you're just
Yeah.
like, okay, now you're not controlled anymore, right? It's
Right.
controlling you. So it's learning how to balance all that out.
I
If that
got
answers your
I
question.
just watched the I don't know if you've seen it yet, but the Tiger Woods documentary that's on HBO Max. Have you seen it yet?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, you have to dive into it, but it goes into his whole scandal and all of that kind of stuff and the downfall of how huge he was. I'm not a golf fan, but actually watching that documentary, I didn't realize how huge he was when I was growing up.
Right.
But just talking about the downfall and the pressure that he had on himself to remain Tiger Woods, and he couldn't be himself. That was his outlet, was going to Vegas and doing the crazy stuff, and it was just
Right.
like he probably didn't know how to channel that mentally. It was just, Nike wants me to do this and GM wants me to do this, so like I have to be this machine and I have to walk perfectly. He wasn't taking care of his mental health, which I found very interesting. So for the average athlete, I guess high school athlete, amateur
Okay.
athlete, how do obviously everybody's not going to play at a high level, right? So
Right.
how do they deal with that on a high school level? Because it's not as much pressure as far as uh, performing that for the GM or performing for your college coach, but it's more the pressures of the social aspect, like being the cool guy on the basketball team
Mhm.
and things, or football team, whatever sport. But like, how do they deal with that? I mean, I feel like social media has put uh, more strain on these players from
Yeah.
to perform, and then I have to get a mixtape so I can post a mixtape so I can be cool.
Yeah.
And what is your advice? Because it's a totally different time that we live in now.
Yeah, it's a totally different world for these young athletes, and I think, when you're talking about their pressure, I think it's not just social pressure, it's not just school pressure, academic pressure, but again, a lot of the guys that I work with now, they're adults, and some of the pressure that they and insecurities and that they still hold as older adults is because when they were at that age in high school, they were looked at by their family as, this is the one that's going to succeed and take our family out of this situation.
Right.
And so there's all different types of pressures. And so I think I'll talk to this on two levels. As a coach, I always tell coaches, we can't like group all of them together, right? Because they do have different pressure points and different things going on. So
Right.
figuring out how to speak to them individually and giving them a space and someone to go to and a time for them to go to have that space to talk to somebody about these things going on. Because sometimes, because what happens, I mean, even as adults, like, things will happen in our mind and we feel like we can't make clear decisions because it's just like, you haven't hashed it out with anybody or you haven't done anything with it. And so I think, with kids, with the social media and all these different things, it is a lot of pressure. And I think acknowledging that and not being like, oh, these kids with their TikTok or whatever, like, just sort of like acknowledging, like, okay, like, this is what's going on. And for the athlete himself or herself, thinking about knowing that when people tell you that this world seems like your whole world, but it's really this small, it's true. Because you remember being that age where it was
Right.
like, that was like everything, but you look at it now and you're like, wow, like
Yeah.
that was my whole world. It's so much bigger than that. So the advice I always give, although it's harder, I think, for people to follow all the time, is to treat social media like a business. If I'm talking about to your social media question. And what I mean by that is, it's not a place to go and vent. It's not a place, you really want to think, don't fall pressure to these things, because it's not really going to make or break you. There's people out there that have these incredible careers without being a social media star. Now, are there people that have incredible careers because they are social media stars? Yeah.
Right.
But you know what I mean? Like, just thinking about like the importance of that and not feeling like, in other words, if that doesn't feel like you don't have to be that.
Right.
Right.
I think that's huge because, if I have somebody telling me this, and it's pretty much like you said, it's your resume, it's just who you are. as an athlete, and how you want to present to, you know, college coaches or your peers and whatnot. And I think what we lack is, in today's society, is the trainer, the coach, and the parent not doing the other part of what you said, and recognizing how much pressure is on that kid and asking the kid, hey, what's going on? You know, like,
Exactly.
how do you feel today? Like, what, I feel a difference in you, or, you know, let's talk about issues off the court. Like, are you upset about not getting that college offer? So
Right.
let's talk about it. Instead, most people are pushing. Oh, you got to go work out 5 more times so you can figure out how to get this college coach to see you. And it's just,
Right.
yeah.
There's a balance to that. I mean,
Yeah.
there's 100% a balance to that, because, and that is so difficult for athletes to find that balance, because you 100%, I think, as a coach, and I think as a parent too. I have a stepdaughter, she's 17, and just learning over the years, just asking questions. She may say fine 99 times out of 100, but
Right.
that one time that she feels like opening up, or that one time that she feels like she's going to have a breakdown and she knows she can call me, just because I keep opening that door, that's the key.
Right.
Like, that's the important part. You may feel like you're not getting through, but they listen and they want to know that you respect them and that you're trying to understand them. Right. And I think that part, because I remember too, like when I was a kid, I mean, I didn't feel those things. It was always like
Right.
your parents, like you felt like everyone's sort of overbearing over you, and like you can't like
Right.
just have your space to breathe. So I think giving them the space to breathe, or at least like telling them it's there by showing them and being consistent. That's the really important part, consistent with it. And then, you know, if they want to go, okay, so now you're having a hard time, you know, let's not get stuck in that. And like, let's talk through that. Okay. You want to get to this next level? Then now go do your your drills 5 more
Right.
times. You know what I mean? But like, sort of finding a way to balance the two out.
But I guess all right, so there's not a lot of, like, it's a very small percentage of athletes that go to college to play basketball
Mm-hmm.
or professional. So how do parents deal with that pressure and that anxiety, I guess, of that player, that you're pushing them and wanting them to be all you can be, but like when it gets to a certain level, junior, senior year, and you don't have any offers,
Right.
what are they like? What are the parents supposed to do at that point? Because I feel like a lot of them are pushing them so hard, and then they come to high school, or they're in high school, and now they're in that deep dark depression of, God, I was supposed to be, you know, this great college
Right.
basketball player. So, or you know, whatever. How did they when did they start transitioning, and how do they go about that from the?
That's a really good question. And I have this conversation often with people. Um, it's this whole notion around athlete identity. And so, meaning that not just who you are as a player, but who are you outside of that player, and understanding even at the peewee level, if you want, like at all levels, eventually, for one reason or another, you're not gonna be able to play anymore.
Right.
Whether you age out, your opportunities stop, there's an injury, God forbid, like whatever it is, eventually every single athlete, there's an expiration date to that career.
Right.
And so it's hard because it takes so much energy, and a lot of these athletes, that is their outlet. Their sport is their outlet, and
Mm-hmm.
their sport is where that's their passion, right? And that's where they come alive. But you can't put all your eggs in just that basket, which can be hard to do when it's so time consuming, especially if you're like on a travel team or something like that, you know, and you're trying to do school, and you're trying to do this, and you're so many things you're trying to balance. But cultivate and other options for yourself by doing things like I'll give you a perfect example. So I was having a conversation. She's a friend of mine. Her son is a very, very talented football player at the high school level, has been invited to perhaps play for this really, really well-known program in Florida, but may not get playing time. There's nothing's guaranteed. So we're kind of like mulling over that discussion. And I was like, well, when you talk to them, like, what else is your kid interested in? Oh, you know, he really likes history. Maybe he wants to be like a history teacher or something like that. And I was like, all right, cool. See if that school has like a history club or something like
Right.
that. So that, like, that's what I mean, like developing your interest outside of that, so that when the sport ends, it's not like you're left with nothing. And
So
you're developing your identity by looking at your interests.
is that, but I think, so what you're saying is the parents, coaches, and trainers, parents more so specific,
Parents, yeah.
to really start plugging that. What's a good age to start plugging that? Because I mean, as a high school kid, like I don't want to, you know what I mean? I don't want to listen to
Right.
you. And, you know, I'm going to go chase my dreams, and I understand that. But like, if you plug it in my mind, I'm going to eventually start thinking, you know, maybe like sophomore year, like, hey, my parents are kind of right. What else am I like good at if they get it? So what age do you think the
And I
parents?
don't think it's necessarily saying to your kid, you're not going to make it, find something
Right.
else, because that's not good either. You know,
Okay.
you don't want to like stifle them. You want to believe in them.
Sure.
But I think just saying, look, and not having this doesn't have to be a daily conversation, but just every, you know, look, eventually that life is going to change for you. And what else, what other things are you interested in? And when you find out what those things are, help them. Like,
Right.
say, you know what I mean? Like, do you want me to help you? Like, so let's say the kid's really interested in animals and you have a zoo nearby. Do you want to find out, maybe over the summer, maybe there's a program there that you can take, or maybe you can volunteer there once a month, or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
just to encourage them. Because I think, and I say this because I wish growing up, and I wasn't even, you know, an athlete at that level, but I wish growing up that I had been exposed to more than just a couple of things. Like, I wish I had pushed myself to
And I
basically
think,
intern in life, you know?
I think that's what holds a lot of the kids back, because a lot of the kids, for basketball, for instance, like a lot of the kids have so much pressure that you're going to be that next one, and they don't have that exposure to these outlets to even understand, you know, that you could be a sports agent, or you can do,
Mhm.
you know, you can work for the Charlotte Hornets and still be
Right.
around the game, but they don't
Yeah,
have the outlets, or their parents never had that outlet, so
exactly. And they don't
they
know how
don't
to
know.
guide them. And I think that comes down to it too, right? Like, if your parents are like, they don't know, they never even went to college
Right.
themselves, you know, and that, I mean, that was my situation. My parents didn't go to college, so
Yeah.
they didn't know how to like guide me on some of that stuff. And so I think, you know, it's just the sort of thing of just, again, just kind of like looking, paying attention to the things that interest you. And that's important, I think, for parents, but I also think as the individual, as the athlete,
Mm-hmm.
just pay attention to it. It doesn't mean you have to do anything with it, but just make note of, you know what, this class is really interesting to me.
Right.
Just pay attention to that. And I
Got
really focus on that so much, because I'll give another example. There's an athlete who's a friend of mine, but who I've also worked with, and he decided not to pursue football into the pro level. That was his decision. But for personal reasons. But when that ended, he fell into a depression for like a year or two,
Mhm.
because he's like, I have no idea what to do with my life now. I don't even know who I am.
Yeah. I've been there.
Can you identify with that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I played collegiately, and then I went overseas for a little bit, and I came home, and I couldn't do it overseas, you know, because yeah, I felt like my brain is smarter than my body, and the amount of money that I was making at the time was like I could come home and do something. But came
Okay.
home, and it's just like I've been playing basketball for 25 years, so like I really don't know what else to do. And you know, my dad kind of was like, "Well, what are you passionate about?" And I was like, basketball. And
Basketball.
I
Yeah.
started training. And to give you a little bit of background on ourselves, me
Yeah.
and my partner opened a training facility uh, in our home city. So
Mhm.
it's never been done. So now we're trying to, the reason for the podcast, trying to train the athletes so they don't have to kind of go through what we went through of finding
Exactly.
that bridge. But the good thing you said earlier is support. So like even when I was lost, you know, you feel that pressure of mom wants you to be okay, right? But
Right.
so she get a job, make sure you do this and do that. And it's just like, yeah, but like I don't want to slave for anybody. I just had an entrepreneur spirit. Like
Uh-huh.
I don't feel like I need to do that. And my dad is just like, what are you passionate about? And it's just like, go get it. You know what I mean? Like you got
Mhm.
one life to live, go get it. We didn't grow up in the era of opportunity. I mean, through social media, through everything, how to start a business is now on YouTube. You know what I mean?
Right.
All this information is out there now. So it's just a little different era that we live in.
Yeah, it's definitely different. Like I always say, you know, I got my degree, my bachelor's from Florida State University,
Okay.
but I got my MBA from School of Hard Knocks because that's literally what it was. I started a business, thought I knew what I was doing, quickly learned I had no idea what I was doing, and like have just sort of found out all like, oh, all these things. And every year I'm learning something. It's
100%.
bananas. So, but yeah, I'm like you. I needed to. I didn't want to work for. I did work for other people, but I wanted to ultimately work for myself. And so I think, just thinking about the things, just thinking about the things that interest you. And if like that's your be all and end all is basketball or whatever your sport is, then find a way to stay involved in that.
Yeah, 100%.
Keep that light on. In other words.
So last question on the mental health side.
All right.
How do players deal with mental health after they get done playing? So let's say, especially with the amount of pressure, if I'm a guy, I was big time in high school, I went to a college to play, and I felt like I'm letting the city down, my parents down by not getting to the next level. And now I'm back home, and I feel embarrassed pretty much because I was such a big player in high school. I was just supposed to be this and that, but I don't know how to cope with my life now because, you know, and they're depressed because they felt like things should have been different if they would have worked harder. And how do you deal with that coming back home after all of those pressures and dealing with the mental side of things?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a process. I will say that it's not like I'm going to say anything to you or we're going to have one coaching session and oh, okay, boom, light bulb goes off and my entire life is now I no longer feel these things because again, it's about developing your identity outside of that. And if you are harboring self-judgment or you're being really hard on yourself or you're feeling like you're making mistakes, it's really about so I'll put it this way: the difference between coaching and therapy with like a mental health counselor or a psychiatrist, psychologist, is that in coaching we're not looking at the past, we're focused on moving forward, right? So like if you need to diagnose and figure out why you are the way you are, that's something you go to like a therapist for. But in coaching we want to say like, okay, so that's what happened, but here we are. What is it that you want? How do we get there?
Right. Oh.
And so it's looking at that. It's not saying like it's not dwelling on
past.
Yeah. I mean, of course, like that affects everybody, but it's like, okay, so that happened. We can't go back and change it.
Right.
So what are the things that we work on now to move forward? And those are probably going to be tiny baby steps, right? So looking at what you really want for yourself and then breaking that down. You know, it might be like there's a gentleman that I work with, he's transitioning in his career and it's, you know, some days we're working on, you know, business decisions that he wants to make. And some days we're working on mindset where he's like afraid and scared he's not a good networker or whatever, like different things that come up. So that's essentially
so for a lot of those athletes, you know, or people in general, there's a lot of just people that go through those things, you know. So how do they if they can't afford mental health coaches or you know what I mean, they can't afford professional advice, what are some pointers you can give to the best of your ability without spilling too much, but what are pointers you can give those people to deal with that, you know, after pressure depression?
Well, look, there's plenty of resources out there. If you're really, really in a crisis, you can call like NAMI, NAMI, the National, I think it's Association of Mental Illness. There's hotlines that you can call for free and talk to somebody if you're really in a moment that you can't take it and you just need to let something out, and that's free. Right. There's like apps now, there's all kinds of, and that's the beauty, I think, of the internet is that there are so many things and it can get overwhelming. But there's so many people out there that have put out so many good things where you can get a book like the one I was talking about with George Mumford's Mindful Athlete. You can get, one of my other mentors and coaches is Dre Baldwin. He has a book called Work on Your Game, and like a gazillion other books that are all like just gems, right? So just if you can pour yourself into stuff like that. My book is really short and sweet. There's stuff is specific to mental health. There's a ton of exercises and worksheets in here.
Yeah, I was going to say that as far as the exercise realm, and I know, depression feeds into eating, alcohol, and other substances, and smoking, and it's just, it's hard to get out of that kind of stuff. So like you said, reading and exercising, I'm guessing one of them, just to kind of get that.
Yeah, so I'm a big proponent of mind, body, soul. I think you need that holistic outlet. So I think like when I'm confused and I need to think, I go for a run.
Right.
I don't even really love running, but that's where like I
Right.
just find that's how I clear my head. Some
Right.
people, keeping up with your weight training. If you're looking at the body stuff, it might be yoga, it might be any number of things, but finding more like different outlets, because this is what I always tell people: when whatever's going on in you, emotions are energy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion,
Yeah.
emotions are energy.
That's deep.
And that means that energy, it has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
It has to go somewhere. So you can choose to put it into a positive outlet, like journaling, like working out, like reading a book, listening to music, whatever it is. Or you can turn to things that are instant gratification in other ways that maybe are not so good for you, like drugs or alcohol.
Right.
It's really up to you,
Right. That's a great point. So, talking about marketing and advertising.
Yes, sir.
Your company is social media marketing. How did you get into running that company? Because that's something that I'm actually looking for my business and learning more about that. But how did you get into that? And yeah, give us a little background on that.
Yeah, so that I told you I studied at Florida State. My concentration is in public relations and in creative writing. I double majored. And when I got out of school, I had a couple jobs. I worked at here and there, whatever. I worked at an agency for a little while. Really, really have always loved to write. That was my first love in life. And so I just said, I'm going to go out on my own. I was 26. I'm going to go out on my own and be a freelance writer. So I did that. But the problem is this was December 2007, January 2008. And if you remember that's when we had the Great Recession.
Right.
Not the best time to start a business like that, but I did. But the thing is that I had a lot of time on my hands, and now I had time because I wasn't working for somebody else and doing what they told me to do. I had time to read up on things. And so I started reading about social media. And actually my company, our first presence on the web was a MySpace account.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, going way back. So, because it was like, I don't know how to build a website. I can't afford to build a website. So I'll just do a MySpace account. And so quickly in my mind, I was like, why aren't businesses should be on here the way people are? Like, why isn't, and this is before Facebook had pages.
Right.
Twitter was brand new. Nobody even knew what that was or what we were talking about. And so I joined some networking groups, and I just started talking about using social media as a business tool. And that ended up becoming the core service of my business, because eventually, like 4 years later, people were like, this girl's onto something.
Wow. Yeah, it's crazy.
And that's how that became that.
Gotcha. Cool deal. Well, you got a lot of things going on, and we'll wrap it up. Tell the people where they can find your book and where they can follow you on social media platforms, and just to gain more information about Miss Misty Buck.
Yeah. So on social media, you can find me everywhere: Clubhouse, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is, at the Misty Buck. So just the word "the" in front of my name, Misty Buck. And then my website is purposesoulathletics.com. If you hit the resources button, by the way, there's a ton of free stuff there. So if you're an athlete out there, you're an individual struggling with some stuff and you're looking for some resources, check that out. There's a ton of stuff there. The button to get my book is there. So there's just a lot of stuff there that, so if you're really looking to transform that, and you're ready to stop feeling like a robot, you're ready to, and just become comfortable with being a human and get comfortable with the fact that you have emotions and figuring out how to talk to somebody, that's a good place to start, is that resources page, because there's a lot of good free stuff there to check out.
Cool deal. I'll be ordering a couple of books myself. I love to support the people that come on and sit down, give their time up for my show. So I'll definitely be supporting books, and I can definitely use all this information, because I really try to think outside the box with my athletes. A lot of my athletes are, we're already preaching the what else are you kind of passionate about, and trying to open their mind to stocks and real estate at an early age.
That's so awesome. Don't you wish you had that when you were growing up?
I know. So that's the sole purpose of everything that we're trying to build, is just like,
I love it.
Didn't have that knowledge growing up, because I just think back, like, if I knew all of this at 17, at least when I was done, I would have just been, we were getting per diem checks in college for $500-$600. I would have just stacked that up and started.
If you would have known, right? If you would have understand budgets, if I would have known how a budget worked, if I would have understood like investing, like I wouldn't be scrambling now in my late 30s to make for my future happen, So I think that's really, really incredible work that you're doing.
Thank you. Same thing with you. And I appreciate you for being on again. Thanks, Misty.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in to the What's the Alternative podcast on the Power Basketball YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn that bell on for notifications for more videos to come. See you next time.